Good morning, everyone. So when we talked about my talk and speaking about how to build an agile organization, my first thought actually went to my children and my family. I have 4 kids ranging in age from twins that are 4 up to a 21-year-old. She just turned 21 this last weekend in Las Vegas. So if I don't have a voice or look tired, I chased her around making sure she was okay the whole time. But actually, I want to take you back to a movie. Do you guys remember the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin? Oh, yeah. All right. I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. And one of my favorite scenes is the old grandma towards the end of the movie when she's sitting at the table and Steve Martin's going on and on about how terribly difficult his life is and how crazy it is with all these kids, and his wife just told him she's pregnant again. And the grandma says, you know, when I was 19, I got on the roller coaster with your grandfather, or with my husband, and it went up and down, up and down. It was crazy, exciting, exhilarating, scary. And then there's people who like to get on the merry-go-round, and they go round and round and round. Well, I like the roller coaster. And then she sits smugly. And Steve Martin looks at her like, you're crazy, whatever. What does it have to do with anything we're talking about? Well, running an organization today, you have to be ready for the roller coaster. Do you guys agree? Mm-hmm. It is not the days of the old merry-go-round, and if anyone worked for IBM or one of the big corporations a long time ago, it was more like the merry-go-round. We all had a set management structure, and life was predictable, and we knew where we were going to end up on the career path, and where the company was going to end almost to the T by the end of the year. Well, boy, have things changed. And in order to build an agile organization, we have to talk about change and what it's like to live on that roller coaster. And I don't know how many of you know the story of Camp Bow Wow. I've lived a pretty crazy life, and it wasn't crazy, though, until I was 27 years old. Until I was 27, it was pretty much the merry-go-round. And I had planned out my life pretty much to a T. I was in pharmaceutical sales, was married, had been married a couple years to a great guy, and was on the path to having the 2.46 kids, or whatever it is in America that we have. And my parents decided for my husband's 25th birthday to give him a gift to go up in an old 43 Stearman, one of the old stunt planes, with a friend of theirs who was a United Airlines pilot. And they did all the stunts, and Brian loved it. He was one of those people that loved extreme sports. But then the plane crashed into the ground, and both of them were killed instantly. And my life changed dramatically, and change became a constant in my life, whether it was personally or professionally. About 4 or 5 years later, my little brother came to me and said, you are really struggling. Like, you're not happy, you're not following your passion. He goes, what if we dug out that old business plan that you and Brian wrote back when you were married and see if we can't get it started? And I had received a pretty big settlement from the plane crash and managed to blow most of it at this point through loans to family and friends and investing, not with you guys, with other people that weren't as good at it. And so I said, yeah, I'll just take the last 80 grand I have in a retirement account, cash it out, and put it into dogs. That sounds like a great idea. So that's what we did. And we've opened the first Camp Bow Wow over by Herman's Hideaway on Antique Row, and then moved it over a couple blocks after the zoning administrators didn't like what we did. And then opened a second one, and then started franchising in 2003. And we did pretty well until 2005 summer. One day the phone just starts ringing off the hook. And we're like, what is going on out there? Why is everyone so interested in Camp Bow Wow all of a sudden? Well, do you guys remember America Online, like when everyone had AOL, the dial-up, and you've got mail? Well, one of the 3 rotating stories was the next great franchise. And it had a picture of me with this little lab puppy. And we got over 3,000 franchise sales leads from that one day. It was insane. And things changed again very dramatically. And I hired family, friends, anyone who was walking down the street to work for me. This would not go over well with Kathleen. I did everything you're not supposed to do. I think at one point I had most of my team was family and friends, which is a whole nother talk. But along the way, we grew like crazy. We grew so fast until 2008. And then I get a call in January of 2008, and one of my franchisees says, hey, I just got a call from my bank, Comerica, and they took my loan away. I go, what do you mean they took your loan away? Well, they'd already paid the franchise fee, and it cost about $300,000 or $400,000 at that time to get the camps open. And we had about 40 franchisees who had signed on but weren't open yet, because we were selling like 5 or 6 franchises a month at that point. And he said, yeah, Comerica just said that they're not franchise financing anymore, and all of us, our loans are getting reneged. And I was like, what? Well, at $50,000 a pop, these people had invested. I mean, all of a sudden, people were freaked out. They didn't know how they were going to finance their camps. We didn't know how they were going to finance their camps. We had probably about 70, 80 units open at that time. And we were like, what is going on? So we called the bank, and they said, oh, yeah, things are changing in kind of behind the scenes in the markets right now, and we're just doing some kind of CYA. I was like, well, where are we supposed to get these people funding? They didn't have any answers. So I didn't panic at first, and we got busy and started looking at other financing options. But little did we know the big crash of 2008 was coming a few months later. So September rolls around, and now we're really freaked out, because do you really think people are going to keep spending money on doggy daycare when all heck breaks loose and you're losing your mortgage and all of your investments? Well, the long-term answer was yes, thank God people love their dogs and they kept spending and our units did fine. But the franchise sales did not do fine. And we went from selling 5 or 6 a month and bringing in that $50,000 per franchise fee to 0. And SBA, I mean, you couldn't get an SBA loan to save your life at that point. So we had to redefine the whole way we did business at that point. We basically took a step back and looked at unit economics and what did we need to do to attract the big players, like the multi-unit folks that had a lot of financing capabilities that didn't need to go out and get an SBA loan. So we all of a sudden had to figure out how to drive our average unit revenue from about $540 to $1 million per unit and get our net profit from about 16% to almost 25% to attract those guys. So obviously we had to do a lot to change the way we did business and really rethink how we ran our franchise company. And as I look back, I have a better view on how we did that and how we stayed agile and how we adapted to the changing environment. But when you're in the thick of it, it's not so easy to see that, right? And it's very scary. It's very just, you live on the edge the whole time. And what I learned over that experience were a few key messages that I want you to take away with today that I think helped us become an agile organization and helped us eventually sell Camp Bow Wow to VCA, the veterinary chain, in 2014, once we built it to about a $100 million brand. And so in order to get there, as I look back, the 3 things we did were, number 1, we embraced change instead of pushing against it. We had to learn to just go with it and know that that was part of our lives now and part of our experience in running this company. The second thing we did was, instead of listening to a lot of expensive consultants and folks from the outside, we started getting on the front lines and talking to our franchisees, talking to our clients, talking to their employees, talking to my employees, and really listening to what was happening out there, what people needed, what people wanted from us as a service provider, and how we could take better care of their dogs for them, and how they would keep spending money with us, regardless of what was going on in the economy. So we embraced the change, we listened, and then we engaged people. We absolutely engaged people to the extent that they were tired of talking about it. I mean, we literally had meetings constantly, conference calls constantly, had contests, wanted to do whatever we could to get our clients talking to us, our franchisees talking to us, our employees talking to us, and then celebrated every little success along the way to make sure that people knew we were moving in the right direction, even if it was just baby steps along the way. So we embraced the change. We listened to the front lines, to the people on the front lines, and then we engaged them and celebrated their successes. And at the end of the day, I think it really was that simple. Just listening to people, acknowledging their opinions, making them feel like they're part of the team and that they're part of the process, because we were all in it together. And it was a scary time, but we came through it together as well. So that's the takeaways I have for you today. Camp Bow Wow has been a fantastic journey, and I've learned a lot, and hopefully you can take some messages and apply it to your own businesses, regardless of whether it's a dog company or an investment banking firm. So thank you.
Thank you.